here we are in 2018, which will soon be the year of the dog. I don't know why I'm so animated by the Chinese New Year. Maybe it's because it relates to animals and it's slightly more real to me. I mean, I'm in the presence of a master astrologer, and I guess I'm have a very low glass ceiling, and somehow I relate more to dogs and horses than I do to plants. So we're in 2018, the year of the dog, which is a year of collectively caring for each other, and a year of prudence. And of course, dogs spelled backward is God, which is at least many of our preoccupations of most of us. And so as a topic for this webinar, we're with two of the leading lights of the return of the divine feminine, which is most welcome since the undivine masculine is leaving this planet in a shambles. I mean, really, look at who has produced the planet of war, disease, crime, and poverty. It's not the feminine principle, it's the male principle, I believe, and most of the actors are male. And I saw an article yesterday that 97% of the investors in Bitcoin are male and only 3% women.
Wow.
So, and it was a lot of deep consideration about that.
Wow.
Which I thought was very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And so, and well, I have some questions here that I want to ask the oracles of Delphi, and I'm sure that in their time they were at many oracular places in our history, hopefully. And that is, we're with Laura Eisenhower, who everybody knows, and hopefully you'll get to know even more in these days as we have the more intensified return of higher consciousness, higher self, and divine soul to earth, which is the topic for today. And with her is Dr. Maree Batchelor, MD. I was explaining to one of our housemates who's from southern India, who's here getting his certification as a dentist at UBC, the University of British Columbia. He's also a very spiritual man. I said, well, Maree has gone to India several times and has had deep interdimensional experiences with the beings who brought the Vedas. So he understood a lot of that. So, so with the miracle of life and our being brought together, it's kind of amazing. This is using the internet technology that, you know, if you look back at it in our generation, we didn't have when we were growing up. And here we are in different parts of the world, and we're talking, and lots of people are listening to us. And so, starting out with Laura, what does the phrase "the return of higher consciousness, higher self, and divine soul to earth" mean to you? Is that accurate? Is that an exaggeration? Is it a truth? Is that what's happening? Just kind of over to you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Alfred. It's great to be here with you too, Maree.
Yeah, my gosh, 2018. Well, the window period of ascension, what's called a stellar activation cycle, has been considered between the years of 2000 and 2017. And what it really represents is an opportunity for individuals to connect into higher consciousness, to really sort of experience what one would call like downloads, where you're tuning into information that is more about wisdom, more about what's organic, what's in our natural world, what's coming in from spirit, and what our inner self is telling us, energies that we're truly made of versus mind control versus the imbalance that patriarchy has caused. So the stellar activation cycle has been about the geophysics of the planet being such where natural stargates begin to open. And because our DNA and our chakras are directly linked to the earth grids and the stargates, it's something that we're experiencing with the earth. We're hoping to act as conduits, as many people as possible. So as far as where we are right now, cosmically speaking, and on a planetary level with other planetary bodies, this is the time where we're able to experience this in ways that we haven't been able to for thousands and thousands of years. The cataclysms of our past history and the galactic wars and all the things that sort of step down into this physical density have made it very, very difficult because everything's been out of alignment. That's why we were so easily taken advantage of. And over the course of the last 26,000 years, with the precession of the equinoxes, we've come back into that alignment. And so on an energetic sort of physical level, it's kind of like a balancing of our chakras. It's an opportunity to get more grounded in to the physical planet as well, which this ascension window period really represents the activation of the mother energy, being able to be grounded back into the earth body. And so the attempts of transhumanism and artificial intelligence has been to steer people away from this natural process, which has a lot to do with just developmental phases of, us learning how to upgrade our DNA and remembering who we are based on the willingness to be authentic, challenging belief systems that don't resonate, things that we've experienced in the medical industry, and just a chance to really fall back on ourselves more and trust our own inner guidance and trust the messages that our bodies are trying to send us, and to step away from all that so that we can, really, find what our truth means to us without all that projection and all those diagnoses. And I know Dr. Maree, we are, discussing this, and yeah, I think we're all on the same page about this. So the challenge is that, it's not so much that men are the ones in the wrong. It's just the programming of the negative ego and how it's impacted the male, and the programmings to keep that feminine energy sort of exiled or kept quiet or disempowered. It has been sort of this deeper agenda that's been running through that male character in order to maintain that imbalance, so that the feminine is being fed off of versus empowered as a creator force within men as well. And so it's been an unfortunate programming to all of our male energy, and that silencing of the feminine has been so detrimental for both men and women. And so yeah, it's definitely a time of switching that back on and allowing those energies to harmonize within ourselves, to also recognize that divine blueprint that is in everybody. And then that's what switches on our DNA, and that's where we're moving into this expansion together. So I'll just leave it at that for now. But yeah, it's definitely, this is the time. And even though it's past 2017, it doesn't mean that, if you're not on board, you've missed the bus. It just, that was a very heightened time of being able to really start to understand what ascension really means as a grounded physical experience and an expansion of consciousness versus floating off into some rapture or something that disconnects us from this physical reality.
Mm. Beautiful.
Right, Maree. Yeah, that was a very universal view. How do you see?
Well, I love that universal view because it relates very closely to what I have experienced in my own life and what I'm experiencing with the people that I'm working with. And, interestingly, I had that profound awakening in 2014 in the temple in India, where I got zapped on the head and actually went into cosmic consciousness for some time and stripped off a lot of my programming and started to embody that higher consciousness and that truth, and be able to use that energy then to help my patients to clear off their programming and their sabotage. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Laura's saying. This is the time we are being supported to do this, to actually return to our natural state, to our sovereignty, which is peace, love, joy, well-being and self-healing, and actually returning to our inner being, intuitively knowing what to do, and removing the things that have actually been sabotaging or taking us away from that truth. And we're at an amazing time on the planet where that opportunity to connect with our higher dimensional self, bring it through us as a conduit, connect with Mother Earth and actually receive her energies and actually transition into a different being by activating our DNA, clearing off our chakras and actually becoming that true sovereign being. And so it's a difficult time for people as this happens, because all that they've known and believed starts to become, we question it and actually wonder what's going on here. But when you go within, find who you really are, it makes a lot of sense. And I agree with Laura. We've been, the feminine has been disempowered, and it really is stepping into that energy to help transition humanity and the planet. So I see that we're really on par with what Laura is saying, and certainly the number of people that are stepping up to have my assistance is so heartening, because I'm seeing people being activated naturally by what's going on through photonic light packages, through Mother Earth energy, and they're starting the process. And, more and more people waking up and questioning what's been going on here, and feeling the suppression and the enslavement and wanting to do something about it, and really stepping into a transition phase to bring in that higher consciousness, to connect with their higher selves and become their truth. So, it all makes perfect sense when you understand it from that higher perspective that Laura's just brought in, and then where I'm working with the individual and just seeing it actually taking place. So it's wonderful.
Right. Now, this is somebody that I spoke with.
Wonderful.
Oh, wait, I've got to, right. There's, there we go. There was just a bleed through coming from the Facebook side of things. And I kind of want to toss this out to both of you. Someone that I spoke to, who's a woman, said, and a fairly evolved woman, and without getting into duality, because I don't think it was meant as a dualistic statement. However, it was like this. She said that the Trump presidency, which is now, it has moved to now to move the U.S. Embassy into Jerusalem and, empower the Temple Mount. And it's kind of like the Jehovah male prophet, Isaiah version of reality is now occupying the White House. And it's one political party. And it's a very male-oriented political party that is worldwide and making a lot of noise. I mean, Trump himself is a dog, and we're going into the year of the dog, and he's barking a lot, but he's also, being as in that kind of phallic way that, is the ultimate expression. And what this person said was, oh yeah, Trump is going to act out the last gasp of the negative ego of the male, and then the goddess is going to return after that. It's going to, I mean, it's going to be like a male blowout, and everybody's going to get it finally, that Trump is the instrument by which the world gets it, and that the male ego goes nowhere except into, some extreme. And finally everybody gets it. I mean, he's being played as a patriot, as a demon. I mean, all these kind of things. And I'm wondering if you could, I know it's not very popular to comment on him because it's thought to be, quote, fake news or polarizing. I think it's like, not commenting on the elephant in the room in a certain way. And there are all these supposed, things like, oh, we're going to get to the bottom of 9/11, and there's rumors within wars and rumors of wars. And, it's like this ultimate scenario of all the prophecies are coming true. And, we're just waiting for Jesus to appear over in a cloud with all the ships of heaven and all, just right there. And so I would like you all to see if you can come and part through those memes and bring, kind of separate us out and look at Trump, say, take us 20 to 30 years down the road. What's on the other side of this? Doesn't it really seem like this is the last gasp of the negative male ego? And isn't this the Sanhedrin, which is like a male body of an extremist Jewish Babylonian temple cult handed down from Sumeria, the worship of the snake kind of, that's what it's really all about. And it's like the ultimate expression of the archons, blah, 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 blah. So fire away.
I'm not sure who wants to go first here.
Yeah, Laura, please.
Well, that's, a lot to try and formulate an answer to, but that's obviously, a great question. Well, you brought up a few things for me. A lot of it has to do with manipulation of symbology. I mean, we see the owl as a significant animal totem connected to the Illuminati. And I feel really bad for the owl because I don't think the owl would have chosen to be aligned with the Illuminati if the owl had something to say about it, because it really represents wisdom. And if we look at the medicine behind, the owl, really doesn't have anything to do with it. But these symbols, even sacred geometries, have been given distortions or a meaning that they don't truly represent. And what's unfortunate about that is when people see those symbols, they're not seeing maybe a pure expression of it because of the things attached to it or the things working behind it, because they might use it in their art, or people might even slap a vibration on it. And that's okay, because there are different levels to planetary bodies. There's different types of expressions that, animals represent as well. And I think if a lot of people would see a snake in the wild and not necessarily want to go up and pet it. So, I mean, there are aspects of the snake that, have certain meaning connected to the venom, connected to this or that. But the snake is also very connected to the feminine in terms of Kundalini. And there's a lot of ancient artifacts where the goddess is actually holding snakes in her hands. And when it comes to the Kundalini expression, that's something in all of our energy body. And so what I like to do is look at symbology and sort of redefine it for myself and negate perhaps or neutralize whatever is being put there if it's being represented by, a dark, hidden secret society, or if we place maybe something with a certain character that reminds us of a certain creature, well, let's get rid of maybe that particular individual holding that power. Let's return that power to something in that symbology that serves us in a more healing way. So a snake energy can represent regeneration, the shedding of old skin, and that activation of Kundalini, which takes us all the way up into the 9th chakra and helps us to connect with the infinity spiral that's in our energy body. So it can create, profound healing. And so when we look at somebody like Trump and it being sort of the final blowout of the negative ego, it very much is on a surface level. But the difference between Trump and, say, Hillary Clinton, that would have been a feminine energy in the position of power, which I think a lot of women wanted without knowing maybe the darker things connected to Hillary Clinton, her connection with the cabal, her connection with the Illuminati, and, MK Ultra and mind control. And like we saw with Kathy O'Brien's book and a lot of other witnesses that have described her as being part of this in a major way. And so that was sort of the feminine all of a sudden being knocked out of the position, but it wasn't a feminine leader that we would have wanted. So, okay, here we have a very strong ego figure, and the real feminine energy that maybe wasn't representative of Hillary Clinton, I could see definitely emerging after people get that final reminder of how aggressive and how limiting that negative ego can be. But the one fortunate thing that I find with Trump is that he doesn't seem to be entrenched in the cabal. It looks like, based on what certain whistleblowers connected to the CIA have said, is that he is trying to expose these pedophile rings, and he's definitely a part of trying to stop some of these horrific acts from taking place. But on a character level, he's not winning popular support because he comes off so egotistical that I think, there is work being done that is going to serve us, but that sort of character, it's going to expire, and people's identification with it is going to sort of expire. Like, oh gosh, it just is so abrasive, or it's really rubbing people the wrong way. We need something softer. We need something more nurturing. And so then when we can put a real feminine expression, whether that comes through a man or a woman, doesn't really matter. But I think to change the patternings that we've seen for so many thousands of years, it would be great if, that person in those power positions could be more balanced, more of the feminine coming in, of course, at least more balance, if not it tilting more towards, a feminine figure. But I would say the priority is really just that energy being available through anybody in power, the male energy being more sensitive to that aspect of themselves, the feminine intuitiveness, the nurturingness, the care for humanity, the desire to help heal. And so I just like to clear those distortions when I see something symbolic. And if we're reminded about the feminine and her connection with the snake, just look at the sign of Fiacus, the 13th sign. The totem for that sign is that medical symbol with the snake, and it's ruled by the elements fire and water. It's the only zodiac sign that actually has two elements, and the two together form the ether, which is the most important element we could be connecting with in order to complete the larger alchemy. And when that alchemy happens, it burns away the negative ego. It helps purify that in humanity. And as humanity stepping into that frequency, those holding that kind of vibration and power nobody's really going to want to support that anymore. But let's just look at, hopefully the good that's being done with him in office, as far as hope. Let's just hope he takes down a lot of what's going on in the cabal. That's the only thing I can say about Trump, is that I can only hold hope that, that can happen. But as far as his character goes, I'm looking for something much softer, and I'm looking for a completely different government, not the government that we've seen. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. That system doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answered your question enough.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of follow-up questions, but Maree, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I agree with what Laura is saying, and I think that look, what we can hope for with Trump is that he's actually at least bringing forward a level of disclosure that we haven't had on this planet before. So if we just sort of put aside personality traits and ego and actually see that things are coming to the surface, the cleaning out of the swamp, so to speak, and some disclosure taking place that hasn't been possible on this planet before. So there's certainly some good things coming out of him being in leadership role. And I agree, we do need a softer approach at some point, but, we can hold on to the fact that at least some things are coming up to the surface to be shown, to be dismantled. I think it's also interesting what Laura's saying about the symbology. And I think when we understand that the symbols have been taken over by the cabal, by the negative agenda, and being used like a form of black magic, and actually inverting the use of those symbols for their own power. And when we actually go back to the truth of what they mean, bring in the integrity, bring in the higher frequencies, and actually take those symbols back to the truth, they actually do represent something that's got such divinity to it. And it's interesting, we were talking about the owl. I was working with a patient yesterday, and as you know, Alfred, I've discussed with you how I shapeshift, and often will shapeshift during a session when the higher frequencies come in, and people will see me transition into the great being that activated me in the temple in India, and they'll say, oh my goodness, you've turned into this black man sitting here. Or I'll take on the form of a realized female being from India or some Native American. Well, yesterday I became the owl for someone. They said I was sitting there, I had absolutely transformed into an owl. And I know that I'm working only with high benevolent frequencies, and that owl represented to her great wisdom and great information. I've also had in a session where somebody said that I'd become a snake-like being that was actually opening their heart and bringing forth overwhelming love, and they were just overwhelmed in an emotion. So when we actually look at these symbols and understand that they have been used in a negative way, we need to reclaim our power and actually bring in the truth behind a lot of this symbology and start using it for ourselves in a form of creativity and magic for higher consciousness, and much more for the light. So I think interesting to look at again, what's going on the planet, what have they done to us, how they've actually manipulated everything in every way to become a source for their dark agenda. But the truth is that a lot of this, as the sacred geometry, the symbols actually hold a lot of great power when we step in alignment with who we really are.
Right. Now, I just want to say this, that, okay, so people should know that we chose this format beforehand. So I'm just asking questions, and I say that because sometimes when I ask questions, the commenters say that I'm beating up on my guests. And no, I'm not. I'm just trying to facilitate conversation, okay? And I'm not beating up or, asking questions, but I also want to express my opinion. And I'll just express my opinion and then go on to a next question on this subject matter in our webinar of the return of higher consciousness, higher self, and divine soul to earth. And the one thing I just want to say, as a judge on the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal here in Vancouver with my fellow judge, Connie Fogel, one of the great Canadian human rights lawyers, is that among the major, and this was before 20 plus evidence-based witnesses, and so some of the major culprits on evidence-based perpetrators were the State of Israel, the Mossad, Benjamin Netanyahu, and these are people who now have regular access to the White House. So now all of these recently there was an executive order that was released over the holidays from the White House, from the Oval Office, as I say, and received a lot of praise. Oh, he's cleaning the house. And I wrote about it on Facebook in a post that was designated spam, so they wouldn't even allow it. So this reminds me of the film Casablanca. That's a pun. Casablanca means White House in Spanish. And it's at the end, it says, round up the usual suspects, Louis. Because if you go into that executive order, which has a lawyer and a judge, I did, and I looked at those names, they were people from odds and end, people from Gambia and, Nigeria, and all these guys in there. But did they have some of the real culprits in there? No, they didn't. It was one of those, I could just see the Mossad and Benjamin Netanyahu drafting up that order for Trump's signature or the members of the Sanhedrin, because it's a Casablanca rounding up the usual suspects. And the purpose of that was to go after the 9/11. And there's a big touting that there's a 9/11 lawsuit in federal court in Nevada, which I went in and looked at all the supposed culprits in 9/11, which include Kevin Spacey. Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel is not mentioned there because Trump is allied with the Sanhedrin, who executed Jesus 2,000 years ago by the evidence as an extraterrestrial disclosure activist. And that's by the evidence of the Dead Sea Scrolls that are now, as it was leaked, guarded by the Mossad under poisonous gas. So nothing has changed for 2,000 years, and they have a new shill who they've set up through Trump's son-in-law. So in a way, we're back to square zero for 2,000 years. And with a male son of God, Jesus, who all the prophecies, the Messiah is a male, the Savior is a male, the Islamic person who's coming is a male. So it seems to me that it's just another cosmic sleight of hand that has the great unwashed masses, the 5 to 7 billion people that are outside of the maybe at best 100 to 500, let's say, 5 to 10 million progressives who, look beyond all of this. There isn't the expression of God there. So, and there are many different expressions of God or the goddess. I mean, why should God have a gender even? So my next question is this, and I'm sorry for being a bit of a, kind of a skeptic or whatever, or pushing the question hard, but why shouldn't we? Does God have a gender? Is there a male God and is there a goddess? God and the goddess? Is God an it? Is the creator goddess? Is Sophia? Did a goddess create the universe? Does the goddess create the universes? Is it the female? Is it the male? Is it isn't this just part of the Lucifer rebellion? Lucifer and Satan and all these characters are all male. It's just another part of the deception. So it seems to me that if I were expecting a savior, that savior would be a goddess, or a goddess who would say, there is no gender to God. It's all within you, or something like that. I mean, that would have the ability to really bring out the humanity in humans. I mean, which is what, because of the greater corpus callosum that women have, and the way that they're trained to really think of the whole, and they have to create and raise children and families and think about things, and they don't buy into bubbles like Bitcoin that are NSA, scams. Vladimir Putin saw through Bitcoin pretty quick. Okay, so that's another rant-like question that I'm tossing your way. Laura, do you want to try that one on?
Yeah, well, gosh, it's so simple, but it's so complicated, I guess, from what I've come to understand. I mean, if we take it all the way back to sort of that 0 point energy, I mean, there's different ways that one can define what that means, but really it's like a unified field. It doesn't have a gender. It's where we might experience neutrality without it being like apathy or being cut off from our emotions, but it's a neutral field that has to do with such profound balance that we're able to really bring in the light of the central universe, where it may have all begun. I know a lot really depends on belief systems. So in my research, I like to, understand architecture, understand the different, sort of levels, based in a free will universe that we're on. And so from my understanding, a lot of these ancient texts have been altered slightly, and they've demonized the role of the feminine, and they've promoted more of the masculine. Even texts that do talk about, Sophia even. The Nag Hammadi has been altered from what I've heard. I had some questions about that, and it got validated because I was like, something's not quite right about some of these stories. But anyway, so if we look at Ein Sof and we look at that in connection to our blueprint, our 12-strand DNA and how it connects into that, and how all these different archetypal pairs are coming out. And there's the Ogdoad, which represents 8. There's the Ennead that represents 9. And these are actually, they start to become pantheons. Like the Ennead is the 9 main deities in Egyptian mythology. And then you have, Greek, Roman, you have Sumerian, you have all these different pantheons where we hear about gods and goddess, where it's become plural. And the reason, at least my theory, is that it became plural because a portion of the masculine energy branched off or split into the Luciferian ego because of a free will universe. And that ego wanted to play with power. It started to become about, false light and domination, and even using the mother energy in order to steer beings away from source itself. And it was a massive violation in a lot of ways. And so hybridization and genetic manipulation is a part of that tactic, while using the creator energy of the mother. And when this began to split off, what was originally a trinity, which is mother, father, and then child, not just a male child, but mother. The Holy Spirit is known as a feminine energy as well. And same with the earth body, Gaia Sophia. So when this Luciferian energy split away, it created a response. And in that response, these different archetypal energies were birthed, which is what creates the pantheons. And so the reason there's so many different characteristics in these pantheons is because there's a reaction to this opposition. And in a reaction, you start to develop different sort of personality types. If you look at the tarot, there's 78 cards, 22 major archetypes. Supposedly, we have genetics of 22 different alien races even. And we tend to externalize all of this, and we forget that this is a part of our architecture on a physical level and on a multidimensional level. And so if we bring it back to simplicity, though, I would say the true source is, sound, light, frequency, energy, vibration, and there is a core, Trinity. That is a blueprint that we all have. But to me, true God source is like that 0 point energy that is a neutron window into these other universes. It helps us to see that we're not the only universe here. And in this ascension window period, these universes are coming back into alignment where we are then able to activate our galactic chakras, because we're stepping out of the looping in our 7 chakra system, which is very limited to this particular density. And because of the distortions of the logos and the archonic influence on our chakra system, we keep recycling back into this 7 chakra system, and we have not been able to bust through the fence to get to the other side. And when we connect to true source, which is what this planetary body is helping us to do, because it was seeded as an ascension planet, it's through the mother energy and the womb that we're able to sort of rebirth and regenerate and shed the old and step into the new. I would say it's genderless, though, because you need the masculine and feminine to create. But yes, there can be spontaneous birth that the feminine is able to do. And I could go into it like a story about Komodo dragons and these virgin births that happen after they had virgin births in their little dragon tribe. But I would say, if I were to answer that, I would say it's genderless. But from that space of unity was the birth of the blueprint of the masculine and feminine, and it's built into our DNA. And as long as we're in a patriarchal system, we are the feminine's exiled, and it's in partnership with an imposter. And it's a negative character that we have to say goodbye to. We have to divorce ourselves from it so that we can experience the Christ consciousness, which is just as much a feminine energy as it is a masculine. And so the patriarchal perspective fears the power of the feminine and so wants this imbalance. But the true God source is the union. It's the Hyros Gamos. It's the union of the masculine and feminine. And the more we embrace that in our own physical beings, and we do that inner work to get to the core of who we are, and we manifest those type of relationships, we begin to tap into that unified field, and we begin to move beyond the limitations that this particular density holds. And that, to me, is the experience of being connected to true source. These lower creator gods, though, have been impacting timelines. They've been injecting their control agendas. They've been commissioning different negative extraterrestrial races and groups to do their dirty work. And it's just been a big mess. So to get back to true source is to just get back to the core of yourself and to know that it's encoded in nature to help us to evolve back into that awareness.
Yeah, well.
Alfred, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You just to have a follow-up with Laura, you said something really interesting, and that is that Christ consciousness is both genders. That is, it's well, first of all, I'd like to hear more about Christ consciousness, what it is, and also right now, the social stereotype is that Christ consciousness is the male deific consciousness, because you've got the stereotype of Jesus Christ, and you've got, it's almost, that is, there is no, if you say, let's have a woman Christ, well, that's blasphemy, isn't it? You have like a whole section, like 100 million people in the United States that would stop talking to you and stone you. Really. So let's start talking about Christ and Christ consciousness and how we move that out of the masculine square into a feminine square and a feminine masculine square. And what is, why shouldn't it be in a feminine square? I mean, it seems to me that if there's going to be a Christ, it's going to be feminine. I mean, logically, if I were debating the case, I used to be on the debating team. If I were debating the case, I would say the strongest case is that your Christ is going to be feminine, and that Christ's consciousness is the return of the divine feminine, not the return of Jesus Christ or Christ's consciousness. That the New Testament, anyway, was the best historical record shows was commissioned by the Roman Emperor of Flavius Josephus, the Israeli propagandist. So, over to you again.
Well, the goddess energy goes through the gates of the underworld and has to, in a sense, resurrect, goes into the zone of death without fully losing the physical in order to be a part of that regenerative power of nature. And the thing is, if we look at our own energy body, we have a right and a left, and the left is the feminine, the right is the masculine, and the earth grids are all masculine, feminine. They were unplugged. The Cathar and the Albion bodies were unplugged where the masculine and feminine connect. Our DNA has not been able to synthesize the masculine and feminine due to these dark technologies that were put in place to impact the earth grids, so that we have this polarization of the masculine and feminine. And then religion has distorted Christ's true message. I mean, the whole message had to do with sacred union, had to do with the union of opposites, had to do with polarity integration. Christ consciousness is a goddess consciousness. A Christ conscious male is a goddess conscious male. A goddess who's truly in the feminine also understands the divine masculine, because the masculine is a huge part of what her energy body is made of. And just because we come into these particular shells or genders doesn't mean we don't have just as much connection to the other side. It's their ability to mix together, work together, so that we're constantly conceiving seeds of higher consciousness to birth through the feminine womb a creative experience for ourselves. If we've got negative memes, if we've got propaganda that's infecting our creative energy, we're giving birth constantly to things that are less than desirable. But if we're in our consciousness, clear and pure, in Christ consciousness, we're constantly birthing miracles and divine magic and bliss. But the two have to work together. So if Christ is only Christ without the feminine, then that's a patriarchal presentation of it. If the goddess is so bent on feminism that she negates the masculine, she's not helping herself or anyone either. So it's that purification and the real true expression of the masculine and feminine working together that to me is Christ consciousness, which actually represents the upper levels of DNA, 10th, 11th, and 12th strands. It's an avatar consciousness. And then when we go into the 13, that's the connection to the mother energy. And then we go back into the divine trinity of mother, father. But the children, the offspring, have to do with, we're all Christ conscious. But to be in that consciousness, it has to be about understanding that balance. And that's, I mean, people can take that or leave that, but that's what I have come to know to be true.
Thank you. Dr. Maree. Could you bring us a medical, spiritual, galactic perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about balance. It's all about bringing into balance the divine feminine and the divine masculine, which exists within us both. Both of them exist in us, and we need to balance them and actually bring forth that truth that hasn't been distorted, and actually use the energies of both and actually become that creative force that connects back to that pure source energy, that consciousness, which I believe is genderless, but actually brings forth the ability for us to express both a divine male and feminine component. But it is really about balancing all of that and clearing off the sabotage that's happened to actually take us down ego traits of both feminine and masculine. So it's cleaning off any of the, the sabotaging programs that distort the divine feminine and the divine masculine within us. So, that's what it's all about, bringing in higher frequencies and returning us to balance, returning us to truth, returning us to our sovereignty, and actually cleaning ourselves off, cleaning off this conduit that has actually been taken over and actually sabotaged into programs that make us distorted from that truth. So, I agree again with what Laura has been saying. So from my perspective, it really is it's about balancing. It's about activating those 12 strands of DNA. It's cleaning off the things that have been done to block the truth, and balancing the right and left hemispheres of the brain, opening up that corpus callosum, getting that connection through so that we are creative, we're magical, we're grounded. We're also here on the planet using those frequencies through us to actually create and manifest something that's more divine.
Right. Now, I'm kind of pushing at this because I've been dealing over the last month or so with the issue of Jesus very deeply, of the second coming, with various publics, and it's and with the world prophetic, kind of scenarios, and so we're still in the first hour, so I still want to push it a little more, and how do you both deal with the issue of most of the with the major figures of prophecy and of consciousness are males, like Jesus? When people say Christ consciousness, the image is always Jesus. I mean, Laura has articulated very well what Christ consciousness means to her. So how do you see that changing in the next 20 years, where you have a huge population that says, in the next 20 years, Jesus is landing, and a portion of people are going to ascend with Jesus, or they're going to go someplace else, or they're going to ascend with the Messiah, or they're going to go somewhere else, or they're going to ascend with the Islam. I can't remember. It starts with an M. The Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I. How is that something that figures large in your personal lives and mission, or is that something that just figures large in the lives of some people like me who grew up Catholic, battling these kind of demons in whatever stuff I had to deal with? Laura?
Yeah, well, interesting, because I didn't have any religious background really at all. And so for me, I don't see it in any religious context. In fact, I just see that the religions have all been used to actually distort reality and bring forth a lot of misguidance and untruths. And so I go beyond all of that. I go beyond these these understandings to the highest truth, which is pure source consciousness, and that's who we are in truth, and bringing that forward within this vessel. So I just don't even, a lot of what you're bringing forward, Alfred, doesn't even cross my consciousness. And when we talk about ascension and ascending with certain beings' assistance, really what we're going to be ascending with is our own truth, our own highest frequencies that connect back to source. And it's not about being saved by any of these so-called religious figures coming to help us ascend. It's actually the energies coming through us that are going to purify our mind-body costumes and actually allow us to embody the frequencies. So it's not something that really figures highly in my work or my understanding at all. I go beyond that, and I think that's what the truth is. It's higher frequencies and activating our truth.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that. I'm not a religious person. I was exposed to it growing up, and it really got me into just wanting truth. I mean, I don't deny that these important figures once lived on Earth, but I feel they are more representative of a potential that we all hold, and that there have been a lot of figures that are similar, but maybe didn't play the particular role that, some of them played, but none of those stories have been, told correctly. So I this is when I realized I could have been told I had ADD, but I was like, no, I'm just a selective learner, and I'm just not able to take that in. There's no resonance there. And so I always see it in terms of, what we're made of, what are we trying to achieve within ourselves? What do we need to rescue within ourselves? There are things that have been targeted. There's things that have been forgotten. So it's about remembering, and it's also about clearing and purifying. And I absolutely agree. It's the energy that's coming in that's doing it. And this is what the ascension window period is about. It's a time where those energies are stronger than they've ever been. But the attempt to steer us in another direction that is detrimental to our soul development is also coming in very strongly. Things that can digress our soul and take us into, merging with technology more, where it's all about quick fixes and things that don't include soul development or spiritual development. And the thing is, we're all naturally spiritual beings. And a lot of these religions have turned people off of, the true messages, to the point where people don't even want to hear the word God, and they cringe at the word Jesus. And that's all, too bad. But I think everybody needs to discover what it means for them, and to step away from something telling them that this is what it is, because we all have our own unique personal relationship with it. And it's a relationship that we have with the earth. It's a relationship we have with spirit, and how we get to the highest level of awareness is our own personal journey of life lessons, life experiences, different things that we go through on a physical level, different things that we have epiphanies about, that our higher wisdom shows us, different adversities that have given us what we need to grow and transform. And I think life gives you exactly what you need, and there's no greater truth than what's right in front of you and what you experience on a day-to-day basis. And it's through nature and through the laws of what you're manifesting based on what you're holding on to and carrying, that show us the work that we need to do to develop ourselves, to heal ourselves, to get back to our own truth that is a part of these greater cosmic truths, natural laws, cosmic laws. And the rest of it can make it really complicated. I mean, I do understand astrology. I understand archetypes, but I prefer to understand a person's story in relation to those, instead of have a story be projected upon how other people are experiencing them, because then that limits them, it controls them, and it puts them on a path of trying to attain something or be saved by something, and that takes them out of that personal responsibility of what it takes to do the inner work. And so there's that, but then there's also the pursuit of justice. There's things that need to be called out. There's things that should not be taking place on the planet. Pedophilia, any sort of abuse to nature, to humans, in a way that's deceptive and lying and non-consensual. So, I like to sort of balance my thoughts about all that and live by both, Yeah, but as far as these religious figures go, I think it's some religions can be helpful for people because it gives them a moral compass. But when it starts to become something where they're projecting it on others, they're preaching to others, they're convincing others that if you don't believe this, you're going to hell, or you're not going to ascend if you don't align with this figure that's going to be showing up at this prophesized date. I think that's all detrimental. It's all harmful. It's all to scatter our minds, our brains, our hearts, our souls, and it's going to throw us off if we're not careful. I think everybody needs to just practice free thinking because we've been under mind control agendas for so long. Have discernment, expose yourself to information, but stand back and ask yourself, does it resonate? What does your inner self do? Does it constrict or does it become open? Does it make you feel healthy? Does it make you feel grounded? And if it works for you, great, but don't lay that on somebody else. Let them have their own experience. And the greatest hope we can all hold for each other is not just mutual love and respect, but honoring the diversity. Whatever it takes to get you to a purified place of consciousness where you're recognizing the need for unity and mutual love and respect, great. But everybody deserves to experience it in their own way without feeling like they fail if they don't believe something. The most important thing is that we don't harm each other and we treat each other the way we would want to be treated. And I just like to keep it simple like that. Just basic integrity. So.
Yeah. So we've now going into the second hour, and what I'd like to do now is kind of open it up and just ask you to envision what you see in 2018 and forward, because you mentioned, Laura, that the year 2000 to the year 2017 had to do with certain processes in the ascension process. So I assume that 2018 is kind of a new plateau. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to your addressing that, but just sort of take as much time as you need, but how you see our Earth dimension developing in 2018 through, say, 2025, which is like a portal that I've heard mentioned in many contexts, which is like kind of an ascension implementation portal, if I can use those terms. Or, sort of where humanity starts to vote or define itself as to those humans that want to come into higher self, higher consciousness, and divine soul, and other humans that are still want to play war, disease, crime, and poverty.
Okay, I guess I'll take this one. Yeah, I mean that's somebody's. If that's the choice somebody wants to make, that's the dimension that they're going to remain in. The thing is, if we try and heal this dimension, I mean, we can do the best we can because we're here. We can try and create justice, disclosure, all the things that are important, clean up our environment, take good care of our vessels, and step into this sort of greater unity consciousness and our divine purpose, really. And yes, we will see positive change, but at the same time, it's like there are people that don't want to move into higher earth energies. So how can they possibly move into higher earth energies if they don't want to, if they don't believe it, if they can't conceptualize it, if they can't embody it? So, there are different higher earth energies based on the amount of DNA you have switched on. So it's about energy circulation. It takes awareness and energy to find those places. So if we have our attention on higher wisdom, it's going to be easier for higher chakras to be opened. Ones that connect to places that we don't even realize chakras are, like beneath our feet, way beneath our feet, in deep space even. And so that energy circulation is similar to an organ receiving more blood and nutrients. It's able to function more properly. So it's not so much we're attaining something, we're turning the lights on to something that's already there. And when we can perceive it in our consciousness, the energy is going to start to flow there, and we're going to see things change in front of us. The outer reflection is going to be different because we are able to perceive something that isn't as limited as what mind control and programmings and social engineering has done. So those that want to stay stuck in that, they'll either have a huge epiphany or a crisis that helps snap them out of it, or they're going to go down that artificial timeline and be in a sort of digression that at any time they can snap out of. Because to me, true source is unconditional love. There's no banishing, off to hell, I don't feel. Unless you choose to stay in that state of mind and you're not finding the tools to connect with something that can help bring you out of, danger. When we're vulnerable, when we're children, that's different. We have a responsibility as parents, teachers, and guides to take care of those that don't have a voice. But, when we're exercising our free will and we actually have the choices, we're not necessarily all going to go to the same place. But if enough of us reach a certain level, I do feel it will ripple out and invite many, many, many souls to join in. And those that really don't want to will split off into something else, or they will manifest some sort of crisis because their higher self isn't going to let them go too easy. And that's why we sometimes manifest adversities, to shake us awake. Just as much as we manifest blessings, we have to embrace both. So 2018 is, the vibration is going to be a lot stronger, and the choice to move with that energy and allow it to flow through and to let go of the negative ego constructs or our attachments to it is going to really be where it's at, versus having it all externalized, waiting for a savior, being so immersed in the news that everything that gets presented is taken at face value to the point where you feel like you're at the mercy of what you read and hear. I mean, we're much more powerful creators than that. We don't have to attach ourselves to any sort of future scenario that isn't in resonance with who we truly are. And that's the major choice in front of us. Are we going to choose our authentic divine self, or are we going to be played and manipulated? And anytime there's something trying to control our thought processes is a big red flag and something to watch out for, whether that's the medical industry, politics, religion, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that there aren't positive elements to some of those things, but there's got to be a point in which we are able to step away and see how it may have served us instead of get so entrenched in it that it's taken over.
Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I think what I see is that the adversity is really what's cracking people open, so that the more chaos that's being presented on the planet and the more people are experiencing in their personal lives of difficulty, of trauma, of feeling overwhelmed, they're actually cracking open. So there is something that's being served here with the ramping up of so much deception and chaos, that it's actually starting to activate people. And I think that we are at this time on the planet where we're really being assisted to awaken naturally by the photonic light packages, by the frequencies of Mother Earth. So there's a process starting to take place. And then there are more of us waking up, holding these frequencies and actually raising the frequencies across the planet that's actually assisting people as well. And it's by being in these energies and being with other people, and actually we're the conduits that are also helping to wake people up. And it does go back to self-responsibility. It's about this activation starts, people start to get more of an awareness of what's really happening here. And that's when free will really starts to take hold, because I believe up until that point, when we've been so mind controlled, mind wiped, sabotaged in so many ways, there really hasn't been free will. We've actually been enslaved in this dimension, being controlled. So it's only as this activation is starting to take place that free will is really becoming possible for more and more people. And then it's actually getting back to self-responsibility. It's actually not consenting anymore to the manipulation that's going on. And I'm really teaching a lot of people about standing in their power and actually saying, I do not consent. Actually noticing their thoughts when they've become parasitic, that it's taking them out of the present moment, taking them into past or future in a negative way, running high levels of anxiety. which I believe is all part of this mind control. And we need to now, when we've been activated and more self-aware, actually bring awareness to the fact that you're being parasitically controlled and actually say, I do not consent to this, and stop feeding the beast of fear. Stop actually feeding into the negative agendas with negative thoughts, and actually rise above it with a higher frequency, and actually start saying, I know who I am in truth, and bringing that light in more and more to actually assist yourself to ascend. It is about our own being, our own connection to source that's actually going to be part of the shift here. And I just think that this is going to take hold more and more, particularly in this year. I think we're going to see more and more people waking up and actually finding their own truth. And it's a tipping point. The more of us that wake up, the higher the frequencies that we're embodying, and we actually do change the frequency on this planet. And we will have more people on the planet in the higher frequencies on the planet, but not actually triggered by the matrix control. Is that sort of, making sense to you, Alfred? You understanding what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. And I just, well, let me share with you kind of the thoughts that I'm beginning to entertain, and I'm just wondering whether I'm off my rocker, or whether this is grounded, or whatever. Through various connections and research, I've discovered the C60 molecule, which is the buckyball. And, and I've interviewed people, and I've started taking it, and it talks about life extension. So, it talks about life extension of 60 to 80 years. And then I interviewed one fellow, and he said, yeah, it's going to extend your life 1,000 years. I don't know, maybe, I think he was, who knows whether he was telling the truth. But then there are all these prophecies about, and death shall have no dominion. So maybe we are, whether or not I die tomorrow, or I live another 60 years, or I live another 80 or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 is, that's up to whatever happens. And it doesn't, it's immaterial to me, but it would be really cool to live another 50 or 80 years or 1,000 years, right? So I've begun to think that, hey, maybe with C60 you can live another 60 to 80, or, and maybe there is a there's 1,000 years or something. So, and that's what they say, and it's like totally off the wall. I mean, even thinking in my, I'm 75 years old now, and and people have been taking pot shots at me. I had a directed energy weapon that knocked out my vision in my right eye. I had to go back to the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. They issued me a white cane. I got myself back into the land of the living, and now I'm thinking about, hey, maybe I can come back and live 80, 60, 80 more years, and maybe C60 will make you live 1,000 more years, like there are all these prophecies, and I'm starting to feel that. I mean, are these crazy thoughts? Yeah, I've got Laura Eisenhower here, who's a cosmologist and a seer, and I've got Dr. Maree Batchelor, who's a physician and who's familiar with some of the factors that I'm talking about. And we're talking about ascension, and which I've been thinking about also, and that is that maybe ascension is that the dimension changes with you, you know, that it's from the inside out. You know, not that we will float up to some place, but that the dimension changes around you, and that your body is, you know, as it changes with the C60 molecule, which came in from outer space, and which is the positive black goo, which is counteracting the negative black goo, which was here on the planet, which all the negative matrix has been using, like, to really do all its false flags and stuff. Was, oh, well, we got hold of the positive black goo now, so let's have some fun. And all of a sudden, well, we started the 1,000 year of heaven on earth. Are these like off the wall, the latest version of the hippie generation? I mean, I come out of the generation, you know, I had Allen Ginsberg on my radio show with the Soviet Union. That was the first radio show between Russia and the United States in history. So I kind of go back to a different era. I'm from the silent generation. Most people at best are boomers. So am I like Methuselah? Is this like, are these like crazy thoughts? You people are reality checkers. So give me some.
So my thoughts on that, Alfred, are that when we remember that the frequencies that we are, the truth, the connection to our higher self, and bringing that into this vessel, we go back to our natural state of self-healing and well-being. So that's possible. So therefore we will have, you know, longevity, we'll have good health and well-being. But then we understand that that's being sabotaged on this planet. We've got genetically modified food, we've got the chemtrails, we've got the vaccinations, we're all over medicated. And so we look at the population and we see everybody actually deteriorating. We've got more diabetes, more obesity, cancers, youth suicide, we've got these immunological disorders, we've got all these allergies and reactions that people are experiencing, you know, diagnoses of Lyme disease. We seem to have biological weaponry in the form of viruses and parasites and all sorts of things. So understanding who we are in truth and bringing that frequency into this vessel gives us the potential to completely clean ourselves up. We are stronger than anything that they're doing to us on the planet. However, because the amount of sabotage is so extreme at the moment, and we, you know, to assist this process, to use things like C60 is certainly going to help. So anything that people have discovered that is actually assisting them to embody the frequencies and activate this self-healing process is obviously extremely beneficial. But I'll always go back to the fact that it is all about frequency embodiment and actually getting that source energy, that source frequency light into the body to activate regeneration, renewal, extension of the telomeres. This is all possible. Detoxing with the frequency. And I know that when I do my process, for instance, on people, bringing in the frequencies actually detoxes the heavy metals, the mercury, the aluminium, the lead. It actually releases the toxins from the cells. It's detoxing the liver, the pancreas, the spleen, and every other organ. We're also capable of releasing the parasites, the bacteria, the black goo. And after the processes where I've brought the frequencies in for people, they actually notice that overnight things are actually releasing from their bodies, and they'll wake up, you know, with a bit of black goo sort of coming out of the base of their feet. So these things are just about bringing in frequencies, and anything that can assist is obviously, you know, great at these times on the planet. So I think what you're saying is absolutely true. And I think also that we've got to remember we're infinite beings, that we are infinite light, that this is just one vessel, one lifetime. And so it's great to make the most of this time here that we have in this particular vessel. But understanding that infinite awareness of who we are is actually also, you know, you'll be reincarnated in another form, in another body, in another dimension. So, you know, death isn't actually what we've been taught it is anyway. But certainly making the most of what we've got here is you know, the aim of my mission. It's actually cleaning up people so that they can actually be their sovereign state on the planet, and returning to well-being and self-healing is absolutely part of it. And overcoming the diagnoses that people are being told. And I was talking with you before we came on air, you know, so much of the medical diagnoses has actually missed the point of what's really going on here. You know, the psychiatric diseases, the disorders that people are labelled with are actually, it's bone pointing in a way. It's calling people mad when they're actually starting to wake up and experience the truth. And so people should, again, go back to self-responsibility, not give their power away to other authorities, including the medical profession. It's not to say that you can't get some assistance, particularly with emergencies, and certain treatments are obviously necessary for people, but taking self-responsibility for who we really are in truth, and actually not relying on authorities to tell you what's going on, and actually bring in an ability to self-heal. So, yeah, I think the C60 sounds like an excellent idea. I think it really is something, an antioxidant. I think it is assisting with the healing process. So, yeah, but, you know, how long we'll get to live in this particular lifetime, given the toxicity that we've all been subjected to on this planet, I don't know. But we're certainly capable of living happier, more content, peaceful lives in a higher state of well-being. So that's certainly what my mission is all about on this planet.
Right. Laura, do you want to add to that? Or
yeah, that was awesome. I mean, the thing is, our bodies were really designed to be able to hold a multidimensional frequency. We're really operating under a programming. We have been for a long time. You know, mind control has separated us from our own bodies. It's almost like a foreign thing to so many people. You know, you take it in, somebody tells you what you've got, this is what you take, and they give you a prognosis, they give you a diagnosis, and it's either hopeful or it's not. And I mean, it's important that we take health into our own hands and understand that it serves us. Anytime there's a bodily symptom, it is trying to tell us something, it's trying to guide us into healing versus taking us further away. But it's important to know what gets depleted in the body, what things we might have been holding on to, maybe grief, stress, anger. You know, what toll has that taken on us? What are we putting in our body? What sorts of foods are we eating? What do we know works and what doesn't work? It's similar to like religion. We got to step away from what we're being told and step into what our inner self is trying to tell us. The most important thing, though, is that I would say we have clean food and organic food to the best that it can be organic in this world where, you know, the skies are being sprayed and our soils are being tainted. But I mean, number one is our consciousness. When we connect with our own divine essence, our own divine essence and source, it has a natural purifying effect on the body. It's more powerful than any vitamin that we could possibly take. But in these physical vessels that are constantly bombarded with toxins and all this sort of stuff, like she was saying, you know, supplementing with things are going to be helpful for detoxing, for the antioxidant factor, for, you know, just how we're assaulted, you know, constantly, and the stress that it puts upon our nervous systems. The nervous system, the adrenal exhaustion can be something big. So we have to really, you know, look at our lifestyle and be more empowered in the choices that we're making. If we don't like our job, we shouldn't stick with that job. If we want to hit the road for a couple months and go camping, why not? I mean, people are so afraid to step out of the box sometimes because they weren't raised that way. They weren't raised to think that way. And so as much as food has a huge impact on us our lifestyle choices, and how much we can push ourselves into the ground, how much we might negate the amount of playtime we have, or the amount of room that we give ourselves to experience love and adventure. That's just as important. Energy is just so crucial that we find energetic balance so that we can wake up feeling really good about the life we're living, the environment that's surrounding us. Do we like where we live, or do we want to get the heck out of there? Well, don't give up. You're a creative being. If you want to move, if you want to create change, you can create change. And there's sometimes that change is brought to us whether we want it or not, because something's trying to tell us there is something better. So we have to constantly read the signs. I think the kind of supplement you're taking is great. I study, nutrition a lot. I know of a lot of supplements that will really, assist during these times, because we have to really hold space for our physical bodies to be able to get the activations that we're getting energetically. And the two together are incredibly important for us, for our body to be able to handle this shift in vibration. We're so used to this heavy density that even if our consciousness is moving really quickly, our physical bodies can just be dragging along, and it has a really difficult time catching up. Because of the things that are stored in our cells and our organs, because of foods we grew up eating, and any sort of habits that we used to have. So I think nutrition is key, but lifestyle changes are key, and seeking absolute joy and creativity, and doing what you believe in, not compromising yourself for the sake of money. Realize that you're an abundant being, and that we can create what we need. It's going to be hard to just all of a sudden drop the money system, but we are somewhat weaning ourselves off. I mean, Michael Tellinger talks about Ubuntu, and the earth provides all the medicines we could possibly need are in the earth, the herbs, the flower essences, the essential oils, everything in nature. There's something there to heal pretty much anything and everything. And once we connect more with what's natural, what's organic, what's coming right from our mother, the unconditional love of the mother, and we step away from the pharmaceuticals and the diagnoses and the projections and the mind control, we're going to be incredibly, incredibly powerful. But we have to have the thought forms and the perceptions to give ourselves the confidence to be able to step in that direction. A lot of people really fear it. There's a lot of trauma that people will be processing when disclosure hits in the way that it's starting to, come to life. So we have to really support our nervous systems too. But yeah, anything like that, helps. And I think if anybody has a particular health issue that they know is maybe that weak spot, maybe it's something related to heart or kidneys or liver, this or that, really do the research. It's out there, and, pay attention to what your thought forms are. Remember your earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and alchemy is ours. We can turn lead into gold. So connecting with spirit's going to allow for that, but the nutritional support's going to take it that much further. And when I was a kid, my mission was to help lift the veils between life and death so that we could be multidimensional beings. And our body was designed to be able to do this, to come and go from the physical as we please, instead of have these archonic rulers. And a lot of that rulership is what we give our power away to. And the minute we can call it back, we're going to see a whole new set of circumstances unfold in front of us. And pretty much everything that we could possibly need as far as food, nutrition is there, just as much as all the truth we could ever need is right inside of us. And the facts that we've been needing are out there as far as disclosure goes, and what has been, hidden from us. So, those days are gone of not having access to it. We just have to have the curiosity and the soul longing desire, and then the confidence to just step into it. So.
Right. Well, what also comes up for me, because you both are going to Australia now in January, is that is where I had a personal big revelation experience when I personally traveled out there and was introduced to an interdimensional revelation. In my case, it was the Urantia book, and I spent about 6 months in Melbourne around 1980. I had to go there in connection with a trial in in connection with my second marriage, and it was a very multi-dimensional thing. I mean, it was really very involved, and I was reading the Urantia book, which was, I call it like a universe television tour of the cosmos, including the life of Jesus, or at least one version of the life of Jesus. And during the trial, the Queen of England drove in front of the courthouse. I mean, there was like all this gang stalking going on, and kind of at a world level. That happened a lot to me during the 1980s, because all of those scripts were kind of going off that had been embedded, I think, as a result of my extraterrestrial abduction with Jimmy Carter and the Jimmy Carter White House ET. And so I've always seen Australia as a special continent with regard to the ascension process. And I was wondering if each of you could kind of talk about what you see in Australia with the Aboriginal culture there, which they say is, one of the earliest human cultures, and with everything that's going on with them, and with your going there now to, including to the rock in the center, and to that culture, which the colonial settlers have tried to suppress unsuccessfully. Dr. Maree, do you want to start first?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, Alfred. I mean, living here in Australia, we do not have great access to the Aboriginal culture unless you choose to seek it out, because that is something that's really not taught. And certainly here, the Aboriginals suffered so deeply at the hand of the negative agenda, where I believe it was set up because their ancient wisdom that they hold was actually prevented from coming out. And of course, we've had, the stolen generation of Aboriginals, where that actually prevented the storytelling and the passing on of the truth of who they are and their connections through the timelines, was actually then sabotaged by a whole generation of Aboriginal children being stolen from their parents and adopted out. So there was, it's really Australia, the Aboriginal culture has suffered terribly, and we as the white Australians here have not had great access to their wisdom. But I see that people are now starting to wake up to that and actually saying there is something divine in the connection that the Aboriginals have brought through, and that people are actually starting to wake up to that. And certainly, Australia, through the sacred sites, holds great wisdom. And, it's very exciting that Laura's coming out to Australia and is going off to Uluru, and there will be some incredible work being done at that time at that site. But I'm also aware that, to me, Australia also feels like a place that's been, a sort of testing ground, that there's been a lot going on here that we've been unaware of sabotaging programming, technologies. I feel like we've been really put to sleep in a big way. And fortunately, the light that's coming in on the planet is actually activating more and more people here. But we do seem to be a fairly, in terms of higher consciousness, there's not a great deal of awareness still going on in the mass population here. So, I'm hoping for great changes. I'm hoping that, 2018 brings on more of an awakening for the people of Australia here. And I'm seeing it happen. I'm definitely seeing it unfolding. But, it's certainly, we have certainly suffered here from great, sabotage from the negative agenda, and in a way that I don't think many people have become, that many people have addressed or become aware of. So, bring on some more light being workers such as Laura, coming out here and actually starting to, ground in more of these frequencies and open up some of these portals and really connect up some of these crystalline grid lines in Mother Earth and really start shifting the consciousness here in Australia.
Laura, would you like to talk about what your thoughts are about Australia and kind of the ascension or transformation?
Oh yeah, I'm so grateful and excited to be going, because the 13th gate is actually the site of Uluru, and it connects in with the Giza pyramid. The whole circulatory system of the Earth grids just hold a really significant place at this particular location, because it represents the mother arc, and it represents that connecting into the unity field. And when space is held at a sacred site, there's a purification process that's able to take place. We share that as a group amongst each other, but anywhere in the grids where there's been compromised energies, dark rituals and negative technologies have impacted them so greatly, that energy was not able to be grounded in this particular location. And so calling attention to a place like this and holding space in a place like this where the activations are already happening are really going to help it, kind of take it to the next level and take our own personal consciousness to the next level, and help to, educate those that show up and those that hear about it, a little bit more about, stargates. And the 13th gate's an interesting one because it's beyond the 12-strand DNA. It connects in with, how we reconnect with the Trinity and how we reconnect to the Andromeda galaxy. And it being at the tail end of the ascension window period of 2000 to 2017, to have something like this take place so fresh into 2018 is just a really good omen. I remember the minute I got invited, I was just like, oh, it was a massive relief. So I'm like, I got to get myself to that site somehow. And I would just, love to be there. And this other event that we're going to be doing, the Close Encounters Conference. And what's interesting is my uncle lives in Alice Springs, or lived in Alice Springs. He lives in Adelaide now. And he was one of the main lawyers. He's a lawyer for the Aborigines in Australia. And he was one of the main lawyers that protected the sacred site of Uluru. And helped to make sure that it wouldn't become like a huge tourist site where the Aboriginal culture was being, disregarded or disrespected, and they protected the name Uluru as well. And my father didn't tell me this until 10 years ago or so. I'm like, you're telling me this now? Like, it would have been nice to know this about Uncle Richard. I knew he was a lawyer for the Aborigines, but I didn't realize this about the site. So it's just going to be, really surreal in a lot of ways to be there. I've had a lot of focus and attention on the 13th gate and what that means. And, to be at this site and to be in Australia is just awesome. And then to follow it with this next event, about disclosure and we're all a part of this, even if we're not there, but that's the beauty, because this is about all of us. It's just really holding space for that acknowledgement and participating in taking that activation to the next level by really grounding in with the earth and holding the intention for ourselves as a humanity, and us moving into these higher earth energies with Mother Earth is awesome. And it brings back a lot of the stuff I've been talking about for many years in my presentations about the history of this planet and how it became what it is today, and how the consciousness of the goddess morphed into the physical planet. But it hasn't been able to be anchored here until this time. It's been very ungrounded and not in a place of activation. And along the way, this planetary body almost died because of it. So it's just very exciting to be at this stage of the game, finally, after so long.
Yeah. Now, it's very interesting because 2018 is the year of the Earth Dog, Earth Dog. And I just wondered if you could, Laura, just specifically take us through what exactly the 13th gate means, and will you be opening some energies of the 13th gate, and what exactly is going to be happening in terms of activating the 13th gate that we who, pay attention to things like this and may feel it in our extended bodies, what exactly is going to be happening if you go in more in depth into that?
Well, the mathematical pattern of spiritual marriage is the feminine would be the 13 and the male would be the 12. So it's basically the Christ Sophia template. So when we're activating the 13th gate, we're activating the empowerment of the mother force on the planet. And so the thing is, organically, it's already activating because we're in a time in this stellar activation cycle where that energy is able to be more grounded into the physical planet. But it becomes that much more real when we participate, because the collective needs activation. The mother energy knows what she's doing, but it's been very difficult for that energy to be fully anchored into the planetary body because of the amount of darkness that there has been, and the impact that the earth grids have gone through because of dark technology like the Nephilim reversal grid that put everything in a reversal spin, and how some of these grids have been unplugged, and even some of the grids, like the Golden Eagle grid, became the White Eagle grid, and it was completely infiltrated. Most of the earth grids on the planet have been infiltrated or infected somehow or put into reversal codes. So when we go into the 13 is beyond any agenda. That's like a neutral field. That's a unity field. It's not about this race or that race. It's just been very difficult for the mother energy to be anchored in the planet because of all these control agendas and the impact that it's had on the environment and on human consciousness. So any of us can imagine, when we're traumatized, it's really hard for us to be in our bodies. We tend to get ungrounded. We feel almost a disconnect because it's too painful. And if we think of the energy of the feminine, which is very empathic and very nurturing, I really feel that portion of the mother's body was in heartache, a broken heart. Not all her aspects, because if we look at the totality of the mother energy, it's maiden, mother, and crone. And the whole journey of Venus and the Venus transits has to do with collecting all those aspects back into wholeness, going into the underworld to connect with the crone, being on the earth body to connect with the earth, and being connected with the cosmos as the cosmic mother. And it's this whole sort of cycle connected to the Venus transits that has been about what this ascension has been leading up to. The Venus transits have formed a perfect pentagram in the sky to help offset the reversal patternings. So when we move into the 13th gate, we're basically in a place of completion. And I sort of, see it as a very significant time at the end of the stellar activation cycle to make sure this energy is fully anchored, it's fully recognized, because when something's recognized, it becomes a part of who we are. That's why when, people read a website on disclosure, sure, they might not understand it at first. They might block it a little bit, but it's still in their awareness, which means a seed has been planted. So when we gather at a place like this and we activate it for the collective to wake up to this, it might not hit them all at once, but that recognition and that energy rippling out by holding space in the exact location and sharing information about what it means and connecting in with it so that our energy bodies are getting getting the frequency integration, I feel it's going to be incredibly powerful. So the spin of the masculine and feminine is a part of our energy body and a part of how this physical planet connects in with something much greater. It's like a source energy that this planetary body is capable of vibrating, even though it's got physicality as well. And it's something our consciousness can connect to. And then the Christ consciousness is able to stay open to it and stay aligned with it, which brings us into the capacity for our bodies to hold an infinity vibration, which will extend life. It'll improve health, and all the different things we might do on a nutritional level support that too. And it's, it's what's called a pillar gate, a trans, how do I say this word? Transharmonic gate. And it's been very difficult ever since the Sumerian Egypt invasion, when our DNA got unplugged and we got disconnected from source, for us to be able to achieve anything until this particular time period. So it's not like we could have done this 20 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It wouldn't have worked. It's a very, very significant time as far as where we are on the timeline. And basically, around 2009 to 2012, the hosting of the ascension timeline went from the Melchizedeks to the goddess energy again. And so this really makes the statement that this override frequency that we're conduits of has the upper hand on the planet in ways that it hasn't had in thousands and thousands of years. And this is a chance. This is just like things are just really beginning, because we haven't been on the planet for a really long time with this energy fully empowered. So we're going to go into experiences that we've only had visions of or philosophies about. This, I mean, a whole new thing is opening up. So that's really what it represents to me, is anchoring it, holding space with it, being a part of it, and assisting and having it ripple out to all humans here on this planet and beyond, really.
I'd like to make a comment that, Laura, that isn't it amazing how it's been set up, that you happen to be there at this time, at that site, and that's what people need to also take from this, that the higher dimensions of us are orchestrating so much behind the scenes to set things up, to assist this ascension, and to get people into positions that they need to be in to bring this forward. So, it's not up to human angst and striving. It's like it just flows when you start aligning with who you really are, and relax and trust that higher dimension of you, in combination with the other, higher dimensions and galactic beings, set things up. So isn't that beautiful that this needed to happen at this time, the beginning of 2018, and it's set up. It was just, it went into flow. You were invited, you get there, it's all going to unfold without a lot of human, how am I going to do this? When am I going to get there? Oh, I need to be there, and striving and pushing. And I really think people can take from that, relax into your mission and trust, and allow these higher dimensions. They'll set it up for us. They want us to succeed. There's a benevolent energy coming through, wanting this to take place on the planet. We are being assisted. And when we get out of that human fear and actually get into the flow and trust, it starts to unfold beautifully. And, I really want people to take that on board for their own individual missions, because a lot of people are contacting me saying, oh, I'm feeling so overwhelmed and so blocked. But if they let go and trust and actually become very present with who they really are, it just unfolds for them. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. It's so true. It's encoded in us. I mean, we are seeds that are blossoming, and the more strife and conflict that we add to the process, the more drained we get. And I mean, there are attacks, there is targeting for sure. And there was a time where it was so intense. I thought it might sabotage things, but I didn't want to energize it. I didn't want to fall into the belief of it. But I mean, I did have to let go and trust, and it did all fall into place. And I absolutely, encourage people to know that if it's a soul longing that you have, if it's a dream and vision that you have, it knows who you are. It will not let go of you if you let go of it, because you have to sort of let it go to allow the energy flow to take place for it to give it room to manifest. And, this is what's so great about ascension. People are like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And it's like, it's happening. We have to be present. We have to allow it to move through us. Yeah. It's not a big strategy here. It's encoded in nature. It's a part of the flow of everything around us. Yeah. So that's, it's amazing. It's a relief. It really is.
Yeah. And you know, really, when we do understand that truth of who we are and we relax into it and become more patient with the process, you know, releasing ourselves from the time construct of when things have to take place and how it needs to look, and actually, you know, going back to that trust and holding that higher frequency, there's less sabotage that can take place, because it's when we're distracted and in our fear that they'll actually start attacking more, or they'll start to, you know, sabotage us more. So it's all about frequency. It's connecting up, holding that frequency, remembering who we are in truth, and allowing things to unfold. And that's what's really exciting about these times ahead. More of that's going to be happening for people. And, you know, more missions being activated, more people getting on board. And, you know, great to watch this. Really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important that, you know, that people really look at their wounds and their traumas, because, you know, the 13th sign, it's not ruled by a planet, it's ruled by an asteroid, Chiron, the wounded healer. And if we don't address our wounds, if we don't recognize our traumas and our triggers, and, you know, that we are easily fed on, we are easily preyed on. So that's a huge part of the inner work, is to be able to look at that. And like we were talking about before, not through the lens of a projection or a diagnosis that is disempowering, but from a place of, how is this moving me into a transformation? How is this process turning a wound into like a jewel, or you know, something that you can walk away with you know, greater divine power and awareness. So really just taking that time, if one does feel very heavily targeted, to just really look at, okay, what places are they getting in on? Because it can get really intense. I had a bit of a challenge with all that about 6 months ago. That's working its way out now. But I was just like, oh my gosh, there's more inner work. I'm like, but yeah.
Well, and as I'm saying to people, when they hold their light, and when they remember who they are in truth, these things will start to peel off. But at the, you know, the traumas and the you know, the control, the mind control, the technologies that they're using, the actual implants, you know, we can dissolve them and resolve them. However, what's also happening for people, almost the more we shine our light, there is some more targeting that comes along. But knowing that that's all part of the process, and just sort of seeing it as, wow, I'm actually making progress here with my embodiment of my frequencies, because I've actually alerted the negative agenda, and they're actually, you know, they're on to me. And so I always turn it around to a positive, you know, okay, you're doing great work, and actually recognize that. But boy, know that you're stronger than them. Empower yourself, and actually just say no. Stop consenting to whatever's going on. And as you say, healing those places that they can come in and attack. But, you know, it's par for the course. But, you know, as we band together and actually support each other, and actually hold a higher frequency platform, there's going to be less ability for them to do things to us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And it's important that we recognize the weapons, we turn them into a tool, because if we can turn their weapons into a tool for our growth, and to always remember we do have the upper hand, and it's helping us to get deeper into ourselves and expanded beyond the vibration of these assaults and weapons. We can turn them into tools, and then we don't feel like such a victim to it, and which is very important not to do if we can help it. But yeah, it's awesome to be over some of those humps. I mean, the ability to neutralize implants and these dark technologies, we don't have to worry about going and dismantling them and digging them out of the ground. I mean, it's a frequency game. We just have to hold a frequency beyond it, the override frequency to it, and then it sizzles it, it fries it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm seeing more and more with the people that I'm working with. These frequencies come in and things literally just start falling off them. And they're actually in front of me, you know, going through these kriyas as their body is actually releasing the toxins and releasing some of the implants. And I was mentioning before that somebody listened to the process that I did on my previous interview with Alfred. And during that process, this entity that had been actually sort of puppeteering her and actually enmeshed in her very being, became extremely agitated, this dark entity, and started saying, oh my God, I'm going to lose her, I'm going to lose her, and actually just sort of jumped off in the high frequencies that were coming through the process that I did. And her lifelong anxiety and fear left. This entity was feeding off it, activating it, and continuing this looping for her to actually remain in that state. And when it actually blasted off, she just said, my gosh, the relief, and it hasn't come back. You know, so this is what's possible. So understanding that a lot of our fears, you know, are looping around and around through parasitic thought forms, through the implants of what they're making us think and feel. And when we take that power and actually say no to it and bring the frequencies in, blasting off all that they've done to us, is, you know, it really just cures these anxieties, these fears. It's fantastic. So, you know, it's the frequency. It's all a frequency game. Bringing in a higher frequency, shifting out of the lower dimensional matrix, and actually being on the planet, but not of it, not of the programming. And we've all got the potential to do that. And, you know, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, our connection to spirit, I mean, the immune system always has the upper hand over disease, but it doesn't, and it's always there, but we can't utilize it to its full potential if we're not connecting with it, if we're not feeding it, if we're not taking care of it, if we're not taking care of our connection with spirit, and we're lost in all these lower level emotions or mental processes, it just, what's there is not able to work for us. It doesn't abandon us. It just, we have to just stand in alignment to it. And you know, we don't need to trust anything else really, but that.
And we'll see the negative setup for what it is, that it actually distracted us, got us busy, got us feeling like we're failing consistently, always looking without, from, you know, not within, but looking outside for external satisfaction or external, you know, management of our issues. But in fact, it's all about releasing yourself from the externals and going within and finding who you are. And that is where the frequency is. And that's where you find the peace, the joy, the love, the connection, the self-healing, the well-being. Your immune system picks up. Everything starts to fall into place.
Yeah.
So, and remembering we're more powerful than anything that they can do. And it's the remembering. Of course, they wiped out our memory so that we're all here floundering around in post-traumatic stress disorder from all the lives that we've had with all the energetic imprints, mind wiped, coming onto the planet. Post-traumatic stress disorder set up into these ridiculous constructs, these paradigms of belief systems. And that's what we need to crack through. But it's possible. And that's what's possible on the planet now. Amazing that, you know, we get the ability to do this at this time.
Yes. Ah, that's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, well, you know, but the thought that comes up to me now is that of leaders, and that is that both of you, Laura and Maree, are leaders, are in the archetype of leader, and in the former male times, it's a very yang thing where male leaders are proclaimed and they say, we want you to be our leader, whether it's political or religious or you know, and there are all these ceremonies that take place, whether they be financial, political, you know, and because leadership has been generally co-opted by males here. And I see you both as planetary leaders and as people who embody values and vision and judgment that should really lead the planet. And I just would like to ask you, do you feel that way about yourselves? And would you want to move into roles of leading the planet forward? I mean, we don't have to define any institutions or anything, but just moving the planet forward as the guard changes from this male whatever.
I think that decision's already been made for us, by us, from our higher dimensional selves, in conjunction with the benevolent energies and beings that are guiding the planet. And it's not really up to our human selves as such. You know, when I think about the activation, that wasn't anything to do with my human. That was actually, you know, bang, it was on, and it was like a train taking off, and there was no way I could get off. It was just, you know, in cosmic consciousness, stripping off all that programming to bring forward the person that I am today. But, you know, as far as being a leader, what I would like to say is that I feel that I'm on the leading edge of something, because certainly the people from my profession don't understand a lot of what I've got to say. However, that is changing, and there are more and more doctors starting to contact me saying, you know, I actually understand what you're talking about, and there are things that I've seen and perceived, and you know, can you help me there? And I would love to educate the medical community and actually really assist people to start using energies to help heal their patients and bring in that awareness. But, you know, really what I want to do is also lead people back to themselves, lead them back to self-responsibility, so that they understand who they are, and that we all become leaders of our own lives, and that we actually, you know, really take on the truth of who we are, and really shift this planet and humanity into the place that we need to be. So it is heaven on earth, with people living lives of joy, freedom, and that well-being, that peace, that love, that connection. So how that unfolds, I'm open to it all. I mean, so far, Alfred, it's been a pretty wild ride for me. And, you know, I'm willing and eager to just step into my mission and serve, however that unfolds. But I'm here to help.
Yeah, I mirror a lot of what she shared, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like nature, Gaia, this planetary body is leading the way, guiding the way. I just like to draw people's attention to that, what already is, what exists, what we're innately made of, and encourage people to find their passion, their truth, their inspiration, their capacity to trust their ability to heal themselves and overcome pretty much anything. I mean, because as we rise up in this unity consciousness, it's really about all of us recognizing the role that we each have in our communities, in our families, in our friendships, in our partnerships. So, I mean, I see that, yes, my higher self did set this up, and, you know, very much about integrating the higher into the lower. And so I accept the role. I'm honored. I'm humbled by it. I know it's temporary. You know, this is a time of necessity for this. And then it'll start to even out a little bit more, because people will be standing in their power, which is the hope that other people will feel sovereign. They'll feel their divine power, their creative abilities, their capacity, you know, to heal and step into their multidimensional bodies. And whatever it takes to help them get there, I'm completely all about that. And whatever it takes to, you know, protect the environment and to expose what needs to be exposed, to create massive disclosure so that these crimes against humanity stop, is definitely my passion in life. So, and that tends to take over sometimes. I didn't have an expectation of how my role would play out, as long as the goals were met, of seeing this healing and transformation and movement into a much more beautiful world. That's the priority. And whatever needed to take place to assist in that process, I've definitely had an open mind to. So,
right. Well, we've come to the end of the of this segment, but are there any issues that you had wanted to talk about that you had not been able to bring up, and how can people follow you and get in touch with you and your work, and what is your message to people in 2018?
Well, my message to people is, remember who you are, and know that things are changing for the better on the planet. Have that deep trust that we are being guided by our higher dimensional selves, by that truth that we are, to a better way of life and a better way of being. And, I really do feel these frequencies are really coming in. We're being assisted for this shift in human consciousness, and it's a great thing. So, I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing in people and how they're stepping forward and asking for my assistance and really experiencing great shifts for themselves. And that is certainly having an effect with the collective as well. I would encourage people, I think, Alfred, to get to know me and my work, to listen to the 2 interviews that I did with you, or in fact, I think I did a 3rd one with you and Mary Rodwell as well, so that they become familiar with my background, how I transformed, and the work that I'm doing to help with people. And certainly that process that I did in the last interview that starts at the 50-minute mark, someone was telling me, where I go through a whole energetic clearing and upgrade and DNA activation. And I think people will really be assisted by that. And then if they want to do further work with me on particular issues, or they want to have ongoing, personal cleaning and upgrading, that they can contact me. So I'm available to do in-person sessions if people are in Melbourne, and otherwise it's on Skype. And people can contact me by my email, batchelormaree@gmail.com. And I'm here to assist. And that's my mission to, I've changed the way I work. I'm obviously not doing mainstream medicine. I call myself a multidimensional physician. And, I'm here to help. And and thank you again for having me on and this opportunity to talk with you and Laura. It's been great, and wonderful work that you are doing, Alfred. And here we are, all trying to do our best for humanity and bring us back to our sovereign state. So thank you, and wonderful to be here with Laura as well.
Thank you. Laura.
Yes. Well, it was wonderful to do this interview with you, Maree. Thank you for all that you shared. And Alfred, thank you so much for having me as well. Gosh, I mean, my message is very similar to hers, so I won't, repeat it. I know we're at the end of the 2 hours here. You can find me at lauraeisenhower.com as soon as I get my website back on. And I, do one-on-one sessions. I work with archetypal energies of the tarot, with the zodiac, astrology, and really assist people in activating DNA, removing old programs and negative patternings that don't serve one, helping to facilitate alchemical change and transformations. And really just it's happening. Just climb on board, and whatever process that one needs to go through, embrace it. There's powerful initiations happening, and sometimes you might question what's going on with your physical body, your mental body, and emotional body, but just breathe through it, and use creativity as a way to get stuff out, so that things don't accumulate and become overwhelming. Find a way just to release, or take off some of the pressure. It's encoded in nature. It's moving through us. So allow it, and doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It's about what you think of you and what you're feeling, and just step into that place of integrity too, and you'll be in service to others naturally, and you'll be really living a purpose that we all share in common. I mean, we have a purpose to be authentic and sovereign. So we just have to be comfortable just being ourselves again. We don't have to be anything but. I would say that would be the best place, lauraeisenhower.com. Give it a couple weeks and you can find me on Facebook. Laura Eisenhower is my name, and I post a lot there. So while my website's down, you can find me on Facebook. And that's it.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you both, and I want to honor you both as two of my most significant teachers and healers in my life. So, you know, I just want to honor you both as that. And
Thank you.
Now, thank you,
for
Alfred.
this time. And looking forward to journeying through 2018 and forward together. And I look forward to your both joining us again as events develop and as the ascension and expansion continue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good enough.